master has placed you in a dreadfully precarious position.
Dungeon Master and Dwarven Sword Master, Hobgoblins, Dwarves, Elves, and Halflings are some of the characters and terms used in this very complicated and controversial game.
You're playing the most phenomenal game ever created.
All right, what's up, everyone? Another week, another Natural Ones, joined here by Victor Gorchev, as the usual.
Hoi!
And our guest, Chubby Funster. What's up, Chubby?
How's it
Welcome.
going, guys?
Hey.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah, been talking with Vic behind the scenes, and he's like, we need to get Chubby Funster on. I'm like, I know we do. And you're finishing up a Kickstarter, which we're going to talk about.
Yep.
Shadow City, Neon and Blood. And I'm interested in talking about it. It's a Shadow Dark supplement or book to be played with Shadow Dark, and that's the hot thing, and it's been the hot thing for a while now. So I think it'll be cool to talk about that and any other topic that kind of comes up that maybe you want to touch on as well. So thanks for coming on.
I was like, we need to get our rival on so I can tear him down properly.
Oh, yeah. I use you as an example. Sometimes people they imagine a much more cutthroat business environment than I think exists.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'd be happy if Vic made $300,000 Kickstarter, because the people that he brings in will be also potential future customers for me. Only there's certain people who are very contentious personalities that take up all of the airtime on this stuff. But the vast majority of people making things are very kind, supportive people, want to help everybody else.
I try to be like that. I try not to get jealous of other people's success. I try to not have rivalries or like whatever. It's like, I think your stuff is awesome. I think Shadow City is awesome. You actually gave me a PDF already, and I've been looking through it. It looks great. I've seen you on streams like without any prompting talk about Blacklight and talk about my stuff. So I appreciate that. So I don't see why people would think that we have to have some sort of weird they're making similar stuff with Shadow Dark. I bet they hate each other. It's like, no. Like
I said today on Twitter, I think I've said it. Enough people have brought it up in chat, or I've said it on that like the canonical ending of a Shadow City campaign is that you've been revealed to be, vampires are real, and now you roll up Blacklight characters to hunt down your Shadow City NPCs.
Well, Shadow City actually inspired me to make my own. It's very, very early days. I've only started some very preliminary work on it. But I kind of want to do a Hunter the Reckoning type stuff for Shadow Dark now. So using similar rules to Blacklight, because I've already done the gun rules and all that stuff. But different types of classes, different types of magic, and all that stuff, and just more straight up urban fantasy. So maybe once I finish that could definitely dovetail into Shadow City very well, I think.
Well, I'd love to see because gun. We were talking a little bit before we came on. I know a lot about guns, but I'm not obsessed and go into all the different. I'm fine with just a submachine gun category and a pistol category, whatever. But I'd love to see a supplement for Shadow City that was just your ideas for equipment.
Yeah,
and, put it together and do it
that could be a good idea. Yeah, it could be fun. I was willing to do that
under the Shadow Dark license, even though you don't need the book to play. But legally, it's underneath the Shadow Dark license. So you could, everybody, we're all covered under the same umbrella in terms of producing stuff for each other. So
yeah, that'd be cool. Definitely.
I think the synergy between a lot of creators is something that maybe, like you said, some people don't expect. Like you said, some people want to make imagined rivalries between creators, but I think for the most part, it's generally a bit more harmonious. There's a few bad apples that make it seem like it's everywhere.
Right.
But I love seeing other people succeed. So I'm your
Same.
Kickstarter. I mean, you funded like what at 1,000% or something like that almost already.
Yeah.
So
Well,
like that's awesome.
I had kept the expenses down and it's finished. So I didn't need a big goal to hit in order to, pay for art or pay for anything like that. So I kept it at a reasonable amount, and it's been, to me, I look at the backer number, which is now up to 391, which is
Nice.
over Electrum by drive-through standards and approaching gold, which in 1 month is an incredible success for a product. So I'm very, very happy with it. And when it's closed, it'll eventually go on drive-through for a higher price. So getting in on the Kickstarter gives you a better price. But yeah, it's just the first month of it, really, So I'm very excited to see it go so high. From a creator information thing, I didn't have drive-through send out an email to all my customers when I launched, just because I was busy with a whole bunch of things and I forgot to do it. And I did have them set up to send one out on Tuesday, and it made a huge bump at the end. So anybody who does have products on drive-through that have built up a significant number of people, even if you could have a bunch of $3 or $4 products, but if a bunch of people have bought those products, then when you send out that email, it's a really effective marketing tool.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. And almost 10 grand. That's amazing. I hadn't looked at it in a while, so I backed it, but I hadn't looked at it in a bit.
Well, there's a stretch goal for 10K, so I'd love to hit that.
With 24 hours to go, I'm sure you will.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to hit it. Yeah. It's a at cost print option for the player companion, which is my second best product out there. The GM companion is my best selling product. It's the 20,000 goal, but we're not, very unlikely to go there at this point. But it would be great to give people the ability to have a print copy. Like, there's a lot of people who bought the PDF only that I think are in this who could just add a add a POD and pick it up.
Yeah, definitely.
Let me get these super chats here. So thank you, My Ear Trumpet, for gifting a membership. I appreciate your generosity as always, and also for your $5 Australian. He says, sorry, it's covering you, Chubby. I don't think there's an RPG podcast that Chubby Funster hasn't been on. He certainly hasn't left a single stone unturned in his publicity tour.
Yeah.
Well, I was surprised. I saw somebody made a comment on Facebook. I think it was the guy Brad Uderstrom, who's been doing a solo play of one of my products, Terra Invictus, and he said something like, "You must have a lot of friends," and talked about it socially. And nobody had said that to me before, but I have been convinced for a long time that the way to be successful is to not cause a whole bunch of drama and talk to people reasonably and make networking connections with people.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think that is an important part. There's a few people that I'm sure we could think of who have not followed that pattern. And
I haven't always followed that pattern.
Yeah.
I can be a contentious person as well. So
Well,
I wasn't going to say it, but I was quietly thinking it.
hey, I'm self-aware at least.
Yeah.
Is
Like,
the
I'm
villain
a-
arc over, or is it more like we moved into denouement, or what's going on?
I'm trying to take a step back a little bit. Like, I don't feel like there's a need to be that way anymore.
Yeah.
Like I said, what I've needed to say, and it was all kayfabed from the beginning. Like you guys know, if you get to know me and you hang out with me, you're like, oh, this guy's chill. He's not a psychopath.
It was a reaction to several years of bullshit that we had to deal with.
Yeah.
And John decided to react to it that way, and I decided to react to it a different way with lots of drinking. But
I've caught myself a lot. I've caught myself a lot lately, and it's not just because I'm doing a Kickstarter soon too, but just because I'm trying to be I'm always trying to be a better person. So I'll write out a comment or a reply to someone, and I'd be like, I can say this nicer. So I'm trying I'm trying to be a better human being. So, But I think it's awesome. Like you're almost at your stretch goal. You got 9,470, 391 backers. It's pretty cool. I guess like tell us a little bit about Shadow City, Blood and Neon.
Well,
And
the basic pitch is that it is a different way of playing a system or a setting that you're, familiar with and you might like, but you don't like the way that the system works in that setting. So like, there's a lot of people that really like modern vampire as a genre, and it seems like there's only really one system to go with it, and that means you have to take on all of that load. And I've drawn an analogy over the past few weeks to like Forgotten Realms. Like you can play Forgotten Realms with BX, or you can play it with 4th edition, or you can play it with 5th edition, or whatever you want. Vampire doesn't have that luxury.
Yeah.
Right. So the pitch is you can play in that setting, but it feels like you're playing an OSR action adventure game rather than a political drama. Yeah. And so everything is designed to keep, I like the concept of fly by wire, that like the airplane is about to explode unless the tension is all maintained. So when you release the tension on the wing, that's when it swings out. When you pull it, so like all the characters have all of these tensions that are acting on them at one time. Every time they get up, they're losing blood points. They have to feed on somebody to get that. To get the blood, they need territory of humans, and there's other vampires that want that same territory. If they do anything that attracts attention to them for being vampires, it brings down a world of pain all over that. Just killing one person, the police are going to investigate that. You're going to have all kinds of problems. So there's all of these tensions that are acting on the player, but you have a framework that's very open, old school design. It's flexible. You can, whatever you want to do, you can make a ability check to do that. You don't need to have a advanced skill in a particular thing. You can try anything. And all of the GM support that's built into the game in the form of random tables and GM structure makes it so you can run it almost no prep, like a lot of us run old school games.
Yeah.
So you can just sit down and roll up a few random encounters. There's a adventure generator, kind of like in Shadowdark, where you just roll up like a protagonist and a goal and a complication, and then you're good to go. You've got something for them to do. And the players have a lot of things that they need to do anyway, because they need to feed on people. They want to grab more territory. They want to have more wealth to pick up more equipment, all kinds of things like that. And just like in Shadowdark, a level advancement is based on acquiring stuff. And in this case, you can rapidly go from, I need to acquire a AK-47 to I need to acquire this building, and moving yourself up in level advancement by big acquisitions from humans. But that's going to also draw attention from other rivals. Not only are there other vampires in the city, there's all the kind of ideas from various fictions and Vampire the Masquerade. So like there's fairies, there's angels and demons, there's werewolves, there's mages, there's all kinds of people are, vampire hunting societies, religious groups, all this kind of stuff that could be a problem for you. The police, the CIA, the FBI. And so everything that you do, it has that same feel like Shadowdark, where even when you go up a little bit, you come back down. So you're always at that survival level rather than becoming like the level 18 wizard in D&D who can just level whole mountains and shit. You never get to that power level. You're always vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think that's one interesting thing that I think it's kind of lost. I think it is present in old school D&D, but it's kind of lost in a lot of modern games. It's this idea of keeping the players hungry in your game, like there's a couple
Literally.
levels to that.
Yeah.
Keeping the players hungry, like for instance in Traveler, we kind of took a hiatus for a bit, but I've been running a classic Traveler game, and that's a game that's very similar, where like the players are trying to acquire assets and they're trying to acquire goods for their ship to ship from like one. We're almost playing like an economic game in that regard, but
I've been there. Yeah.
yeah, you know, like they're like, it was so fun in one of the last few sessions we did where they were just trying to figure out like, okay, our mortgage on the ship is this. If we pick up this cargo, it's going to be this, and we'll break even with a bit of profit, you know? And so it's like they're always hungry, and that mortgage debt that they have is always sort of making them want to explore, right? Like they're always just like, we got to go from planet to planet. Like if we got to take some goods to this planet, and some passengers, and maybe we can take some passengers from that planet and some goods from that planet and go to this next one. And because of that, like they're exploring the galaxy and stuff like that. So, and it all stems from, again, keeping the players hungry. Like they never feel full and comfortable. Like we can sit back and just, you know.
And the things that they want are in conflict with the upkeep itself on the ship or whatever. You know, you can't drop 2 mega credits on some awesome boarding vac suit if you have to make your mortgage payment on the ship this month. Yeah, like it keeps you, there's this tension of like, how are we going to afford all of these things that we want? And I think that makes care, especially when there's, you know, multiple players that are, you know, one guy really wants that vac suit. Another guy wants to spend the money on some kind of advanced genetic serum that'll give them better strength score or whatever, you know. All kinds of things like that. Who's going to get the magic weapon we just found in this dungeon? You know, like that. That's the kind of thing that drives player behavior, and it's good.
Yeah. So I'm glad to see that implementation in something like this, because to me, I think in adventure games like this, resource management is something that's sort of lost. And so if you're trying to acquire things, like you said, from an AK to a city block, let's say, even, you know, or we're going to control a city block eventually as vampires, you know, that's cool. That in and of itself becomes like you said with Zero Prep, it becomes a breeding ground of possibilities and in how that campaign could go, and the choices players make and responses that the referee can introduce to kind of screw with that. So that's all fun stuff.
Well, I'm a big fan of like urban fantasy settings and stuff, like obviously. And having read through like Shadow City, it definitely boils that kind of like Vampire the Masquerade stuff down into stuff that appeals to me more, because I always shied away from Vampire because it's very like story focused. Like I rarely ever hear about people like about the system when people talk about it, and when they do mention it, it's like, yeah, it sucks. We just kind of ignore it and we just like play like hot vampires and like have like political discussions. It's like, well, that sounds awful. So like being able to like engage a bit more with mechanics and like random tables and stuff like that appeals to me. And also like, I don't know, the vampires are almost a bit more blue collar. Like you're just like some poor like, you know, blood sucking schlub who just has to like make it in life. You just have to like, you know, get your feeding and, you know, try to survive. And yeah, it doesn't, you know, there might be like some weird like overarching like vampire society, but the game's not all about that. Does that make sense?
And just as an example, to pick like one mechanic, in Vampire the Masquerade, they have a humanity mechanic, and I do as well. But in Masquerade, it's a story element. Like your character is becoming more and more monstrous as you drop down this scale, and it goes like from 10 down to 1. In Shadow City, it goes from +3 to -7. If you drop below -7, you become an NPC. That's how monstrous you are. But the positive value of whatever you've got is applied to your reaction rolls. So if you're at -2, you're taking a -2 hit to every reaction roll.
Makes sense.
If you've got a +2, you're getting a benefit to your reaction roll. And considering you're trying to survive in a city of millions of people, being able to make reaction rolls is important, right? But simultaneously, the inverse of whatever you have is applied to your attack rolls. So if you're at -2, you're getting a +2 on every attack roll. So I mean, in Shadow Dark the same way, a +2 is a huge mechanical advantage. So somebody who's at just humanity -2 is going to be a much better fighter in the street than the guy who's at +2. And so from the player's perspective, it's not a unilateral thing that represents my decay as a person. It's like, I have to manage this almost like a resource. How monstrous can I be before it becomes a problem? I can't walk into a room and the humans are like, holy shit, I got to get away from this guy. No, like I need to appear normal, and things like that. So I think every mechanic has been implemented in a way that it's not about the story. It's about the player controlling their character in the game. And your focus is on the physical nature of that world, down to, the building, the city block, I need this car, rather than it being focused on interpersonal relationships like it is in Vampire.
But that stuff informs the story in turn, though, and that's what I like. I like when the mechanics like help to inform the setting and the story and like all that stuff, rather than the other way around, where the mechanics are just like superfluous almost, and the story is all that matters.
Yeah, and I've always been of the perspective, I mean, I'm an old school aficionado, that the story is what the players do that's incredible. It's not what I'm bringing to the thing. Yeah. So in one of the play tests, they had a few guys that they had to kill, and they tracked them back to their basically a drug den where they were these gang members that were living there, and they threw all these Molotov cocktails on the building, and then as the guys came running out, they just gunned them down in the street and then left. And that's a better story than if I had given them the task of going and killing those guys. Like they came up with, we have to go kill these guys. I wasn't involved in that part of it. So I think that's those are the stories that people tell later. Like, there was this time that we did this cool thing. That's what people like. That's what I want to have happen.
Well, your mechanic with the plus, what was it, +2 or 3, and then -7.
+3 to -7, yeah.
Yeah, that seems very like simple on its face, but that definitely affects the story and how you play your character. Because if you're like a +2 or +3, you're like some handsome like Lestat like guy, like some French like twink, and you get some frail looking twink, and you get like your plus reaction rolls. But the guy that's like a -5. He's like some horrible like Nosferatu guy with like long like nails that are hard as steel, and like teeth that can like rip throats out and stuff. So he's ugly and smelly, but he's slicing people up. So that definitely like changes completely how a player like approaches the game, and like how like the story develops from there.
Well, I see Dundermoose in the chat. One of the things I talked to him was about how to do it as a Bronstein. And one of the he noticed, I didn't even think about this, but that if the players are in a competitive situation, or the players are just looking at an NPC vampire and knowing this mechanical fact, there are NPC humans that you have as touchstones that are like the people that you actually do care about. Like the girl that you're trying to make sure she doesn't get hooked on drugs and goes to college, whatever it is. And hey Gary. And so if they die, you lose humanity points. So other players in a competitive situation are going to try to kill your touchstones. Yeah. And if you have an enemy in the city that's just an NPC, you still would know, like, they're a vamp. They have to have people like that. If we start killing all those people, cutting them off, their humanity will drop, and then that person will become like a monstrous danger, So knowing that that's how it works, you could be trying to push other players or NPCs down that slide so that they're losing their reaction. They're losing their cool. They're no longer Lestat. They're like flipping out. Yeah.
But that well, like you kind of like implied, that also could backfire though, because now you've got like an enraged vampire who's growing like scary claws, and
who's at
there's a reason
-5.
to go after you.
They're
So
they're
yeah.
at +5 for combat.
Yeah, exactly. So like there's maybe a fine balance there you might have to walk as like some Machiavellian like vampire prince. So
That's cool. I'm curious with using the Shadow Dark system. One thing about Shadow Dark, and I'm curious. I have an idea. I haven't looked at your product yet, but I have. Yeah, the one key thing is like the torch timer, because that's to me one reason why I haven't really done anything for Shadow Dark is like that just seems so, and I appreciate like you and Vic being super creative with something like in a way that I cannot think of doing. How are you implementing that unique? Is that a unique aspect that plays a factor in this in a unique different way? Or
I do think the torch timer is a good invention. I understand why people have an objection to it. I probably at some point in my past would have. But what I've found is that there's a lot of mechanics in Shadow Dark, and I got into this argument with my friend Joe the Lawyer, if anybody knows his channel. He was like, but you can track your encumbrance, and you can track the amount of time on the lights, and you can do this stuff. And I said, yes, you can, but will you? Because in the reality of running the game, it's just you're a person. You forget to check the timer, and then you're like, oh crap, the torch has been out for 15, 20 minutes. And then so having mechanics the way they are in Shadow Dark, like not going by everybody's ranked initiative, but just clockwise from whoever got the highest initiative, it saves you some time. Oh, there's Joe right there.
Thank you for $5. Rumor has it there's a pic of Greg. It's you.
Yeah.
All gothed out from the 90s.
Those are lies.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think there's definitely a kind of a simulationist argument that you can track things in a more accurate way. But my response is like, will you do that? Will you put the time in? Because it's much easier to just have a mechanic that might seem a little contrived, but at least you're tracking encumbrance with slots. You're tracking time. You're tracking stuff with the torch. So to answer your question though, I don't have that because vampires can see very well in the dark, and it didn't be a problem. And you're in a city with lights all over the place. But I used humans as the same creeping pressure. So like in Shadow Dark, there's the torch mishap table of something goes wrong with your torch, like, and everything goes. I have a mishap table for revealing that you're a vampire. So like right when you're doing something, I'm rolling on this table. Oh, 2 kids just came around the corner. They were playing hopscotch or whatever, right? Like, oh crap! Now I got to deal with these kids. So things can go wrong, and the humans are a relentless pressure on you. If 5 people see what you did, then if you don't take those 5 people out or silence them in some way, bribe them, whatever, when you go to sleep and you wake up again the next night, it'll have been 10 people. And then if you do nothing again, it'll become 20 people. It just keeps doubling. And when it gets to 2000, there's an apocalypse timer. You move that forward by 1 point. So when you get to 10, the humans figure out vampires are real. Yeah. And that's when you switch over to blacklight and hunt your characters down. But until then, you're really not wanting that apocalypse timer to go up. Like it's a risk. And if you're the one causing the timer to go up, then all the other vampires are going to see you as the problem and come to kill you. So the pressure of light is not here in Shadow City, but there is an enormous pressure of secrecy. Everything needs to be secret.
Yeah,
metaphorical light.
Yeah.
A metaphorical light.
The light of justice has to be gotten rid of.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like on its face like a very simple mechanic, but it has like huge implications, and I love those kinds of mechanics. So I like reading it. I haven't read it fully yet, but reading like the book, some of it, like I'm very excited to try it out.
No,
And like you said, once the apocalypse timer hits 0, that's when Blacklight shows up, and yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
that's interesting because like for me, I've wanted to make some stuff for Shadow Dark. I have it on my shelf and I like it. I've played it with my daughter. She likes to play that with me because she's always like, Dad, I want to play D&D, and she, it's just
I've been
something,
there, yeah.
then we do it together. So but I look at it and I just need to I think I need to take a step back sometimes when it comes to that kind of stuff, because that's what you've just described is a very, I think, creative way of solving that sort of, I think, very unique concept that's in Shadow Dark, and it's like kind of central to how that game is played. And on its surface, it seems very much tied to the Torch and this sort of dungeoneering environment. And so trying to take, like you said, that pressure from that Torch timer and apply it someplace else in a unique, different way. Well, that's some good problem solving. Like you, Vic, have solved that problem well with Blacklight, with how you've talked about how this stuff sort of affects electronics and stuff like that. So when you said that, I was like, oh, that's
faster.
Like, when you said that, like, oh, that's brilliant. That's a really great idea of like making that that mechanic from the core game apply over to a new genre. So,
well, like I know that you've considered like doing like a Shadow Dark like version of Makwahital, almost like that Aztec stuff, but you've struggled with that whole like, how do I do the torch timer thing? Like maybe you could do kind of like a sacrifice timer, like maybe maybe if you're playing the Spanish, like you want to keep the Aztecs from like doing all these mass sacrifices, because if they hit a certain level, they the gods become real, and you're kind of fucked. Like. Like something like that.
Like individual character level. So, like your character, if you've got 3 captives from Garland War activity, right?
Yeah.
You've got 3 captives. The torch timer is how long it takes for them to get rebellious and try to get away from you.
Yeah.
And if you're in the middle of doing something, when the torch timer goes, that's when they make a break for it because you're distracted. There's a really great game on PC called RimWorld where you run like a little town, and they added mechanics where you can like take slaves, and there's like a random chance over time that they're going to eventually rebel. And so the worst thing is like you're dealing with some huge problem, and then 4 or 5 of the slaves rebel at that time and bust out and start stealing your stuff, and you're like,
But you could even do like a literal apocalypse timer, like kind of like Shadow City, where if you don't get enough sacrifices, like that's when the gods get angry, and then like what was it, like the second or third sun, whatever, like when and the Aztec worlds, like there's the difference, like the different suns
the sun
that
wouldn't rise if they didn't.
Something like that. Yeah. And then the world ends, and then a new world starts.
Well, this is one of those things, is just to kind of touch on what we talked about earlier, where it's like it's nice having other friends in the hobby that you're not necessarily like, I want to compete against you and beat you, because it's like, oh, you can help each other out because we're all like trying to figure this crap out together.
No, I would love to collaborate with Chubby at some point. Like I said, he actually already inspired me with his Shadow City stuff to like kind of like do the Hunt of the Reckoning type like supplement. So
my weakness is the terrible response time and distractibility.
If
we can move past those issues, then
I'm the same way.
Patty's Parlor has a question. He said, I've been meaning to ask every stream, how do the vampires die, like in Blade, Dusk to Dawn? He has to begin over here too.
So vampires have 2 health metrics. There's a hit points, which is like absorbing damage, and then there's blood points, which power their abilities. Okay, so if you still have blood points, you can heal yourself for 1d6, like cure light wounds on yourself, basically. The problem is like humans will notice that if it's severe, like if you just got shot and all of a sudden your bullet hole closes up, then they're going to know that you're not human. But if you still have blood points, when you get reduced to 0 hit points, you go into torpor. You fall into like a slumber. And when you eventually wake from that, you go on like a rampage to refill blood and heal yourself. So other vampires would probably kill you if that happened, but humans might not know what the F happened and take you to the hospital. And then you wake up, like in Blade, like wake up on the table and start feeding on somebody. If you are out of blood points and you've completely exhausted your ability to heal yourself, when you're reduced to 0 hit points, you do go like you just turn into ash, and you're gone. The same thing happens if you're killed by sun or fire.
Yeah.
That's cool. And you were saying like this is, so it's based off of Shadowdark. You can play it with Shadowdark, but it's a complete rule set, rule book.
It's its own rule set. There are several sections of adjudication that are very like almost the same methodology from Shadowdark. And I put in the front of the book that I'm very grateful for Kelsey and all that stuff, and that she's the source of those things. And that's why it's going to be released under the license, and giving her all the credit for that kind of stuff. But outside of the adjudication methods, the way that the bloodlines work and the classes work, and the stats are different from in Shadowdark. There's huge amounts of character design elements that are very different. But the basic adjudicating of things and using luck tokens and that kind of stuff is pretty much identical. It's just with a different set of stats that you're adjudicating these things.
Okay.
Well, because the concept of the game is pretty different. Like, it's not a dungeon crawler. It's not like a hex crawler. It's still hex sorta, but
it actually evolves into very much a dungeon crawler, Vic. Because you're rolling out these random structures using a node mapping system, and I made the 2 random generating systems so that you could just draw it on a piece of paper without any VTT action unless you wanted it. And so you just start drawing basically a backbone of nodes and then branches off of those nodes to create whatever structure you need, however big it needs to be. So if it's a 4-story building, it might only have 4 nodes, and then lots of branches that are going horizontal, and then you can run it that way. The idea is to make it so that you don't have to map perfectly a huge amount of modern building space. The example I use in the book is Nakatomi Tower from Die Hard, and like there's a garage and a first floor, and then it jumps up to the 3rd floor, and then it jumps up to the 30th floor. Like, those are the only floors we need, right? We don't need all the other stuff in between.
It makes sense.
So you can adjust the map to fit whatever you need. In the play test, they found a building where a vampire who controlled the neighborhood lived, and I put a deep number of nodes going down into the ground where he had found a house with like a deep nuclear bunker that was underneath it. And so they could go way down in there, and he had all kinds of weird shit down there that he had been hiding from people on the surface. So the mapping system works for whatever size you need. If you need it to be circular, you can just connect the 2 ends of the backbone together and make it into a circle, and then branches come out radially. However you want to do it, and it allows you, like when I was saying earlier, like the GM can just make any building they need in a matter of minutes, just rolling it up. Like if you were drawing a dungeon on a piece of paper, you could just draw squares and connect them and say, "This is the dungeon. Here we go. We're good to go."
Well, I mostly meant like, I'm sure a vampire might need to go into like a gang hideout and like take out all the gangsters that are in there, and like it becomes like kind of like a dungeon crawl. But it's not like, as a vampire, like it's not your whole core like goal. Like
you're not returning to town like a D&D character.
Like if you're a Shadowdark character, like you're an adventurer, you go and you want to go into a dungeons and like find treasure. But like as a vampire, it's like you just want to feed, you just want to like survive, and you might have to go into a dungeon and like kill some dudes. So that's kind of like what I meant. But but that does sound cool though. Like I kind of like that. Very theater of the mind, almost.
I love theater of the mind, so I appreciate that. I think you can get a lot. You almost get more immersed in it in that respect. So I appreciate that. It kind of reminds me of I don't know if you've ever played Scarlet Heroes by Kevin
Mm-hmm.
Crawford, but by the way he kind of suggests you map dungeons is like kind of like this node thing, you know, where like here's the entrance and then it branches. Maybe there's an entrance that goes one way and then other ways. And he pretty much suggests like drawing squares or circles, labeling what it is and what's in there real quick. And then you just connect these squares or nodes by lines. So when I saw that, I was like, that's a really like for if you're running theater of the mind, even if you are running miniatures and stuff like that is a nice time-saving way of quickly doodling down what, especially if you're generating things on the fly. Because one thing that's a problem is that when you're trying to draw a map like super accurately, and like you as the GM are trying to be actually accurate, and then you're kind of feeding it to your players and your mappers trying to like be as close as possible. And part of the fun is getting lost, but sometimes it gets so technical that like even you as you're trying to map, you're like, this doesn't make sense, and I made a mistake back here. Now the rooms
don't line up.
How's it actually supposed to be? I don't remember, you know. So
players will infer that there's like a secret door here because you just drew it a particular way, and they'll spend like 30 minutes looking for a secret door. I'm like, there's nothing there, guys. Just move on.
He's just saying that.
I might have to look into that method more, because since I do a lot of modern stuff, I do run into that problem where if I'm like writing like an adventure or whatever, it's like, do I really have to like describe the bathroom? Like can't I just say like, yeah, this is the first floor of the house, this is in it, and like move on? So I might have to like study that method a bit. Yeah,
like, very early in my writing for role-playing stuff, I made a very short, I think it's only like 8 pages long, Ocean's 11 type role-playing game. And I thought it had some pretty cool ideas. I released it for free, where like the players would give the GM a certain number of poker chips to represent how big of a challenge they wanted in this score. And then for each poker chip, the GM could introduce like a significant obstacle on the heist, so that they could like, because if they've got 5 chips, they could have like one really good biometric door that they have to get through, and one elevator that they can't open, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. And, but thinking about mapping a space like the Bellagio.
Yeah, no.
You're like, oh my God, like it would be insane. Like, holy crap.
I actually watched all 3 Oceans movies like literally a week ago, like in a row. Wow. I didn't watch Oceans 8 because, you know, but I watched 11 to 13 like literally last week. So yeah, it's kind of funny.
That's great. I love the series. The first one is one of those movies where like I could turn it on anytime while I'm doing work around the house or whatever, and just run it in the background.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to. We'll get back, I think, to your Kickstarter and stuff like that. But I also kind of want to know about you, because I have you on the stream too, and you were talking about, you know, your first time. That was one of your first things that you designed. I'd love to know more about like because I think you have a ton of people don't seem to know this, but I would say you're quite prolific in the content that you have made for role-playing games. You have like 30 something stuff, supplements and games and things that people can check out on DriveThruRPG, which his link is below, so go check that out. But how did you get your start? What did you get your start? What was the first thing you were kind of writing before Shadowdark, I guess? System stuff for, you know, what's your gaming history? Anywhere you want to start in that, I'd be interested in knowing.
Yeah, well, I actually started out for a long time in my 20s. I stopped playing D&D. I played it when I was in my teens, and then I got really into video games. And you know, I'd play a game like Neverwinter Nights, and that would give me the fix of playing D&D. And I've always had this mind where I'm just constantly thinking of ways to improve whatever it is that I'm playing. And so I'd make mods for video games. And I knew a good bit about coding, and I could build out, you know, whatever I needed to fit into the game programming. But eventually all those games would die, and then nobody'd even be interested in downloading a mod for the game anymore. And it occurred to me at some point that writing role-playing games would be a way to have control over it and permanency, because it would just be, it's my thing that I made. It's not a mod to Neverwinter Nights. So it took all the creative energy that I had and just put it into a controllable medium that was for me. And I had learned how to do layout design for my job. And so I just started, experimenting with different layout ideas, like that Ocean's 11 game. The background of every page is the blueprint texture, and all the game writing is white, so it looks like it's like a blueprint written about how to play the game. It's like I just played around with all different kinds of layout concepts, writing concepts, and I knew that, I know that I'm not good at this yet, so I'm not going to charge you $10 for this PDF that I'm just making as a lark. But then eventually I got to where I was getting good at it. And the first game that I released for money was Ambition and Avarice, which is a old school retroclone. And the idea was that every non-casting character was a fighter thief at heart in some way. And so they all had a set of what were called dungeon throws. And so it was like climb and pick locks and whatever. And you could put your points in different ones. So you could be a brigand, and you could put your points in opening locks and stuff. And you could be another class, like a savage, it's like a barbarian, and you could put your points in something else. So there was like a knave and a veteran fighter, stuff like that. But everybody was like a shady character who was kind of half outlaw, half good citizen. And then that was good for a while. That game brought in enough money for me to start buying stock art regularly, a significant amount of stock art. And over the years, I released a second Ambition and Avarice when I could afford stock art for a whole bestiary. Like the first book didn't have a bestiary because I couldn't afford the art that I needed for the bestiary. And so then the money that came in from the second edition brought in, things that I could use to do other stuff. And eventually, when Shadow Dark came along, I just saw the opportunity to have a first mover advantage, and I went with it. I started releasing. One of the things that people would tell me that they really loved about Ambition and Avarice was it had a huge focus on equipment, like big, huge, tons and tons and tons of equipment. So as soon as Shadow Dark came out, I started converting all that equipment over, because there's very little equipment in the Shadow Dark core book. And people bought, they loved that. They bought that PDF for a long time. And then eventually I combined multiple PDF onlys into what became the player's companion. Just all the things that you would need to supplement from a player side. So it just kind of evolved naturally. And I think a lot of people have this idea, and I don't know why they have this, like it's just an ego issue. I think, like, I've got this idea for the greatest game of all time, right? Yeah. And then they think that they just need to get it out, and then they make some huge monstrosity that nobody wants to read. And I think a much better thing is to focus on making something decent and releasing that, and then once that gets out there, keep working on whatever you're crafting, and then release something good. And then eventually you'll get to something really fantastic and amazing. Yeah. But it takes a long time. And I only wrote Shadow Sun 2 years ago. And already when I look at it, I see tons of things that I would change now. Yeah. And that's just in 2 years. Yeah. So things change over time. You're not going to write the greatest RPG of all time. Start with a 10-page equipment supplement, just focus on what you like,
I love that advice. That's advice that I give people all the time. They want to make their 400-page tome RPG book, and I'm sorry, that's probably not going to happen. You're probably not going to finish it. And if you do finish it, you're probably not going to be happy with it as much as you would if you built up slowly to that, Yeah,
And
definitely.
in a way, Wizards of the Coast has this problem as an inverse, that the market has come to think of, like, by the time you get up to that level and you're writing a book with amazing art and amazing production quality, they assume that it's going to have writing quality that's commensurate with that. And Wizards of the Coast released dozens of products that did not meet that standard. And people said, just because it looks nice and comes from Wizards of the Coast doesn't mean that it's a good book. And they stopped buying the books. And now they're in the deep hole of customers hating them or not trusting them or whatever it is, you know. And it's going to be a long road to get away from that. I think they almost have to like license it to some third party, like, you know, Free League or Green Ronin or something, and just walk away, like, because people just do not trust them to make a book that has good writing quality in it. And I'd rather have a book with fantastic writing quality and little clip art in it than the opposite. And I know everybody, you know, I'm a very rare person who would want that opposite. Yeah, Traveler, fantastic.
It's like no art in this, really. There's like in the 3 LPBs, there's like a tank tread vehicle, like that's it, and a diagram of like gravity around planets. So it's like you don't really need much. I know we think we do, but you don't really need much.
The very first products that I like officially released were just like classes for 5e that I just put on Drive to RPG for like 99 cents and stuff like that. And you know, I did commission art for them for like John. That's how I met John. I got Carlos Castillo to do some art for him. But yeah, that's how I started. Technically, I was already writing like my full on 5e modern supplement at the time, but I knew like, you know, like it's gonna take a while for that to finish, and I want to like release some stuff beforehand and kind of get my name out there. And I don't want to be one of those guys that just like drops on the scene with like a 400-page book like that nobody's gonna buy because I don't know who the hell I am. So I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna like start kind of like small and just like, you know, start, you know, do this stuff. And that's also how I got into the OSR scene. Like my very first OSR supplement was Simple Modernity. And if I look at that now, I'm just like, what the hell was I thinking? This looks like I made it in like Word 95. But people liked it. And it kind of got my name out there. And, you know, that got them to buy Modern Necessities. That's got them to buy Blacklight eventually. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good strategy.
Yeah.
And one of my first things was a 5e hack. And I like you, I released it for free because I realized, like, I don't know what I'm doing. It doesn't look super great. I don't think it looks super. I look back at it now and I'm like, I'm glad I never put a price tag on this thing because delusional, you know.
That's right. It happens like it. There's a great talk by I'm forgetting his name right now, but he's an NPR personality in the United States. I forget his name. And he has this talk about how your taste for a long time will be greater than your ability. So if you really like making bread, like you love bread, it's your favorite food, your ability to make quality bread will be way lower than your taste for the bread, right? So you'll make bread and you'll be like, this sucks. It's way better than what other people might be able to make, but it's just not up to your standards. Yeah, you want exceptional food. And so for a long time, it's like, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about cooking or making role-playing games or building something with carpentry, like whatever it is, your talent is going to be lower than your taste for a long time. And the struggle is to get over that. Yeah. And it's his name is Ira Glass. I remembered it now. Yeah. And it's only like a 3 or 4 minute clip, but it's like a famous clip that's on YouTube because of millions of views. Because it's just very insightful. You know, that's exactly what it is. And you're going to need time. You certainly don't want to start selling the first loaves of bread you've ever made in your whole life. You want to experiment on your family and feed the birds and whatever. But you know, I mean, don't be trying to start your restaurant never having cooked before. That's not smart.
That's true. I feel like that with RPGs, music. You know, I dabble in like making music and things like that. It's funny because like people. To some of the music that I've made recently, people are like, oh, this is really cool. And I'm like, I think it sounds like crap. But people are like, no, it sounds really great. And I'm like, it's like,
For me, it was my early midlife crisis that kind of made me lower my standards. Sounds weird, but you kind of know what I mean. Like, I used to want to be able. I wanted to do all this stuff. I wanted to write. I wanted to make games, but I was always like too much of a perfectionist in my own head. It's like, this is gonna suck, and I'm just gonna look like a fool. Yep. And then, I had like that early midlife crisis, and I'm like, well, I'm not gonna live forever. I'm just gonna fucking do it. I'm just gonna like set aside like that weird anxiety, and I'm just gonna start releasing stuff. It might not be perfect. It might look like it's made in Word 95, but I'm just trying to get my stuff out there. And somehow now I'm like an indie RPG designer, so like I've got an Annie behind me somehow. So I don't know, like I did something right. So hey, you just gotta do it.
You get better at whatever you do.
Yeah.
It's just don't expect it to be, perfect right out of the gate. There's a lot of things you just don't even think about until you're halfway through the process of whatever it is. It didn't occur to me. Even all the stuff I'd read about Kickstarter promotion and so on, to make a YouTube playlist of all the things, all the places where I'd appeared to talk about the game. Like, it didn't occur to me until like 2 days ago. And it's just stuff like that. You learn by doing the thing, and then eventually you realize where you need to improve.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Another question, I guess, about like your roots and stuff like that. So you said you played in your teens and then you kind of stopped in your 20s, it sounded like.
Yeah.
Was D&D your first sort of introduction into it, or were you playing some Vampire back in the 90s? Since this project, Shadow City, is kind of influenced by that.
I played a little bit of Vampire in college, but most of Vampire I played was after I kind of came back to role-playing games. I started out, the first role-playing game I ever saw played was Rifts, and I think I played in like one session, but I was like 13 and I didn't know what the hell was going on.
They probably didn't either. So
yeah, and then the same kids that were doing that, one of them introduced me to second edition D&D, and that was really, those were the first books I bought and I really played the hell out of. I got my money's worth out of the Undermountain box set, that's for sure. I used that map and those books millions of times. But when I play, playing Vampire, I was an adult. I already had kids by the time I started playing Vampire, and to me it was more like Ars Magica is a great example. I love Ars Magica. I mean, the same guy made both amazingly. It's the world that's described there is incredible. The ideas in the game book, like it's awesome, but actually playing Ars Magica is like a fucking nightmare, man. Like it is so horrible. Like just running a simple spell casting calculation is a pain in the ass. And I feel this, like there's a lot of things about Vampire, like I like to play, but it's not, you can get through a few sessions, but eventually I get to a point where I'm like, oh, this is why, like it's like, oh, it didn't work. It doesn't work to do what I want to do here, and I'd rather have, I think actually if you just took Vampire the Masquerade and you stripped it down to just stats and you ran it off of stats, they've got 9 stats and you can distribute dots, and the stats are pretty good as a base system. And if you just use that, I think you'd probably I'd like it better as a game. Like just using 9 stats and what stat is applicable here? Okay, it's going to be a wits roll. Boom, like that would be a better experience than me, because it's like an intersection of multiple things of like the kind of people who play Vampire want a certain thing out of the game that I don't want. The system itself, the amount of lore, as interesting as the lore might be, it creates shackles that prevent you from changing the things that you want. It's like running a Star Wars game in the middle of the original trilogy time frame. Like what happens if you run into the characters? What happens if you're, you can't say that Hoth was a victory. You can't change anything. So it's that kind of thing. Like having all that lore, it's like a dead weight that you have to carry through the game. And so all those factors, like I've played, it's probably maybe my third or fourth most played system, but it just does not deliver the result. I've played way more. I've played way more sessions of Vampire than Ars Magica, but it just doesn't deliver what I want, and that goes to why I made Shadow City. I've had like 4 or 5 different folders in my things that aren't finished on my backup drive of just ideas that didn't get out of the planning phase. You know, that wouldn't it be cool if the stats worked like this or this and that? Hey, good luck, Sly Blue Demon. Good luck, man. I hope you have a great time. It's just not a good game for me. But yeah, so there's all kinds of things that I wanted to get out of Vampire that I didn't over the years. And when I was working on the Shadow Dark GM Companion, and I was making all those tables for new districts for towns in Shadow Dark, and I was like, okay, well, what would be in one of these towns? And could be this or could be that. And I was just thinking of tons. And that's when I realized you could use this same system to make a whole city. And that solved all these problems that I had with Vampire. And I was like, let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah. This is kind of as an outsider, because I've never actually properly played World of Darkness. I've been on some World of Darkness mods, like the online text games and stuff. But like what always kind of bothered me the most about it is like how regimented everything is. Like you've got the vampires, and then you've got the werewolves, and then you've got the mages, and you've got the mummies and the hunters, and they're not like they all exist in the same world, but they're not really supposed to like fully interact with each other, because for the most part they all hate each other. So if like a vampire runs into a werewolf, the werewolf's just gonna rip the vampire's head off like immediately. And like it's like what I want out of like urban fantasy settings, like, hey, I'm a vampire, but maybe the bar that I go to, like the bartender's like a werewolf, and maybe he's not friendly to me, or maybe he's in contact or whatever. Like, maybe my girlfriend is a fairy. Like, I don't know. Like that's what I want out of urban fantasy. I want that intermingling of like myths and legends and like different creatures and stuff. And World of Darkness always kind of lacked that for me.
Yep, and this isn't supernatural reference, but in the Matrix, going where they have to go to the Merovingian in order to get something, like I think that's a great model of how your interaction with like a werewolf might be. Like, I have to go to this guy, he's the only one who has access to this particular piece of information or whatever, but he is not friendly to giving it to me, and I have to work with that as a problem and get him to hand over whatever it is, or I have to find a way to bypass or kill him or whatever. But he's a challenge, and I think that's a good way. Like, if you run into a werewolf, it doesn't need to not like want to kill you right away. In the same way that like most of the time when you run into, people, your interaction is to avoid whatever the conflict is, unless you're like drunk and belligerent. Like, you're not just picking fights with people in the street. You find a way to deal with the problem without escalating to that. And in real life and in the game where you have very limited durability, you don't know if this guy could kill you in one hit or whatever. Like, if I pick a fight with some guy on the street, he could be trained military guy, he could know nothing. I have no idea what this guy is capable of.
Yeah, exactly.
Jaeger says on World of Darkness, they did not design cross compatibility with World of Darkness. Big mistake. I've heard that problem too, like some of the books.
Everything is a separate book and almost a separate setting. It's like they're vaguely connected, but then like they have completely wildly different lore sometimes. That's very conflicting. And
And speaking of lore, Malachi says, OMFG, I stopped running old White Wolf because people complained about me changing the lore. Like kind of like what you're saying with your shackled to it. It seems like people want to be shackled to it. And the irony of that is like, I feel like lore is one of those things that you should like change That's okay to change like right off the bat. Who cares?
Yeah, the Black Lodge guys talk about how there's whole clans that they just hate and just remove and say you can't be this clan. The end. They don't exist.
Yeah. No, if I ever ran World of Darkness, I would completely do my own thing. People would like actual like World of Darkness fans would probably hate it, but
that's one of the things I think that kind of in the hobby today, a lot of people kind of misinterpret. I love like source books, I love a good like role-playing game book that might give you insight into an era or a setting or something like that. But taking that kind of stuff to the table, you're putting it in the hands of players. And so it's sort of, to me, like prep, because it's like you put prep in it's what's the phrase that the Marines use? I think like no battle plan survives contact with the enemy,
Yeah.
None of your prep is going to survive contact with the players.
Yeah.
you need to at least have some like flexibility there if you are prepping. And so I like that you're inputting tools that allow like, okay, I need to adjust, and oh, cool, the book actually supports me being able to adjust on the fly, as opposed to like, hold on, let me flip to this page to make sure like within the lore of the setting, like this is possible, or what would happen,
especially for new GMs.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing for somebody who's been running games for 20 years to even picking up a new system to improvise, but somebody who, my son is 15, he's running OSE for the first time with a couple of his friends. Like he does not have the ability to improvise the way that I do. Mm-hmm. And he ggets himself into situations, he's like, oh man,
what do I do?
But that's just the point. So if you design the game so that you have to be this really high level GM or know all these interactions, I think that goes to the 5e GM shortage that I hear people talk about. Like if the game is sufficiently complex, the GM has to know all that stuff to be able just to know where feats intersect or whatever. And that's a requirement to play the game. And somebody goes, I don't want to have to be in charge of learning all this. And then nobody will run as a GM. So having it be all you have to do is figure out which of these 6 stats is applicable. That's a much lighter load.
Sure.
Well, John and me kind of got the reputation of being like, like we're sticklers for like rules as written, and like we hate like rule 0 and stuff. But like, I love rule 0 when it comes to the setting and like, like all that stuff. Like, modify that shit to your heart's content. Like, just
Well, we wouldn't.
Yeah.
All 3 of us wouldn't be able to do what we do unless we were rule zeroing and hacking a game up at some point. The difference that I believe is like, I feel like I have to do my due diligence to the person buying my product to actually know what I'm hacking apart for them. Like I have to know it. Like I wouldn't, if I didn't know anything about Shadow Dark, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to make a Shadow Dark hack. I go, someone's gonna bite and be like, bro, like whatever you said here on page whatever, it doesn't work. Like that doesn't work. It breaks the game. That's all my position is. But I do think that like when you have a more simplified game where like not necessarily simplified game, but where mechanically speaking it's very like coherent, and there's no real, I don't know what I'm trying to get at, ambiguity, I guess. That is a lot easier for a new GM to sort of riff on and implement sort of ad hoc adjudications that are still within the spirit of the rules, I guess. So,
yeah.
I mean, the game should work. Rules is written to a degree, and if you're going to modify it, then that's okay. But there should be a way of doing whatever it is. I'm definitely on board with, like you have to provide a game. You can't provide a framework for somebody else to do the game. The role-playing games are unique in that it's the actual experience at the table is like a handshake between the rules and the GM, and it's going to be different every time because of that. But there needs to be a degree of predictability for the player's sake, at least.
Yeah.
To know what, like my character, I can't cast more than this many magic spells per day or whatever, and that's like a pretty hard limit. And I'm not going to constantly be begging the GM for the ability to cast more magic spells because I understand that's the rule. But if it was you can cast as many magic spells as the GM will let you, then all of a sudden every interaction becomes the player begging the GM for something, and the GM has to make a decision, and so on. And I think having clear rules about where something becomes the GM's purview and where it's just it works like this unless the GM tells you otherwise, it's an important framework. And there's some people who want to act as if like the actual book itself is like 5% of the game and the other 95% is what the GM does, and it's like, well, then you're not playing a game. The GM is using the game as a resource for himself at that point. It's not the directional arrows, they're going the wrong way.
Yeah. In my opinion, the rules should be very pretty concrete and pretty complete as well. And the framework should be like the setting. It sounds to me like World of Darkness, and particularly what's the word? It kind of control freaks the setting almost. It goes into such minutia that it's like very hard to give it your own little interesting twists and stuff.
Yeah. Well, one of the things in Shadow City, I was just thinking that came up in playtesting was that originally I had said when you're not in a building or you're actually engaged in combat on the hex map because of an encounter or something, time is flowing in hours, and you just tell the GM what you want to do for that hour, and then you work it out. And then when we put it into practice, I realized that was resulting in me having to make a lot of ad hoc decisions about how long something takes to do and so on. So then I created a list of, I think it's like 4 or 5 things that are just kind of standard actions you can take in an hour, patrolling a certain area, scouting a certain area, feeding, all these different things. I'm so then the GM can at least look at that as a barometer and go, okay, well, what you're describing sounds kind of like this one thing, so it should take about an hour, or it should take 2 hours, or whatever. But a lot of people don't do enough playtesting to know that.
I'm a big fan of tables like that with just examples.
Yeah. I had a thought.
Also, get back real quick.
I had a thought with you were saying a game should work, and I think it's something probably I think all 3 of us strive to do. I would think I call it not do. I call it the Bethesda style game release. Where I'm gonna release. I'm gonna release a super buggy game, and then you'll figure it out as the GM, as the community. You guys will figure it out, and that's not my responsibility. And we've kind of become so used to that in video games and things like that. And I think to a degree, we're maybe even farther along in being okay with that with RPGs, with being this game honestly kind of sucks, but it's okay, I'll fix it. And it's I don't know. I don't want to do that to people that buy my stuff, at least not intentionally. I don't want to intentionally do that as a design style. I'd rather give you as much as I possibly can to have as complete of experience as possible. And if I view it as a failure on my part if I screw up in some respect, I guess.
Well, there's some people who, they're just releasing PDF only. And in that case, there's really a strong kind of weak spot there for, well, I'll just, if somebody finds a problem, I'll just release an update to the PDF. But with print on demand, or especially with offset printing, if you update the file, it takes, first off, just updating the drive-through file to get a new print copy requires a month waiting for the proof. And then if there's a problem with the proof, now you're into 2 months. So if I put something up for print on demand, it needs to be as solid as I can possibly make it, because I do not want to have to go through
Yeah.
that kind of process again, just for my own sake, much less for anybody who paid for it and bought and got a print copy that I now think is not good. Like,
Yeah, I had that
am I
happen
gonna get-
actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
should I send that person a free copy of the book? I mean, like, I screwed it up.
Yeah.
So I try to make sure that before anything goes to print, and Shadow City was written before the Kickstarter started. All the art, everything was laid out. I have proofs in hand. Like, we're good.
That's good.
And there's no need to worry about that I might have to fix this and then push it to the customer. Like, I don't like waiting a month for my own stuff, much less for somebody else's stuff that I've paid for.
That is the problem with DTRPG. Like, you could change like literally one line in the file, and they make you order a new proof and everything,
Right.
and it takes like ages, and it might not arrive. Like, I've had issues with it even like being able to arrive. Like, for some reason, customs was like holding back like my copies, and they were like, "Oh, you have to pay like extra taxes on this," and like I'm like, "Why? I already paid taxes. I already paid VAT, as it's called in Europe." So I had like all these issues, but I actually did have that happen. Like when I released Modern Necessities, like all these small issues popped up, and they kind of compounded to the point where it's like, well, I kind of like want to do a new version of like the POD, and I ended up doing it. I was very contrite though. I gave everyone like a Kickstarter update. I actually asked like my backers for like, hey, do you guys want this? Do you guys want me to do like a new POD? And most people said like, yeah, go ahead. So I ended up doing it, but yeah, I did run into that issue, and it was pretty annoying.
Yep. A lot of people are happy with if it's just small things like I decided to adjust this particular modifier to be plus 2 instead of +4 because it was just too much of a problem. But if there's like 20 of those adjustments, then it becomes a pain in the ass. But like if it's just one thing, people can be understanding. It's just the one customer who is pissed will become a huge problem. That's the guy who leaves a one-star review.
People need to understand, like, at the end of the day, we're just like one dude doing all of this by ourselves. And even big companies like Wizards of the Coast, like Paizo, like all those big companies, they have avatars for their stuff, where it's like literally like 6 pages of like, oh, this is what we got wrong, this needs to be different. And, they've got like whole teams looking at their books. So, sometimes I'm like, give me a break. Like, I'm just like one autistic Dutch nerd, like doing all of this. Like, sorry that there's a typo there, or that I got like, that I said +3 instead of +2.
It's amazing to me how much better the work can be from individual people or small teams compared to these huge teams that are, I guess, poorly managed.
Yeah.
And they produce all kinds of problems. I think there's like when you make something, if you make it, since you wrote everything else, the likelihood of you realizing a potentially bad kind of synergy is very high. But if a freelancer wrote the original book and they hired you to write this expansion thing, and the guy writing the expansion is much less likely to notice conflicts with the base book because
that makes sense.
Because they didn't write it.
Yeah, definitely.
And a lot of these big companies, they have like their dream team guys write the core rule book, and then they hand off expansions to people who didn't, and then that's how they get classes that are like overpowered, underpowered. They've got abilities that don't work right, or you can create like a hole in space-time continuum if you do these two things at the same time. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah. But I don't know. It personally does make me feel better when I see like big companies mess up. And it's like, that kind of gives me leeway to also mess up sometimes. Like, I think it was like Shadow 1, like 6th edition. Like when it first came out, it was like referencing rules that weren't even like part of the system anymore. It was like from previous editions of Shadow 1, basically.
Awesome.
And so it's like, like if they mess up, like, sorry that I also messed up, guys. Like, it's just me. So.
Got a super chat from Ben, £5. He says, "Hey, Mr. Funster, first name Chubby. I was wondering if you ever if you would ever make a Shadow Dark supplement inspired from Spelljammer, Shadowjammer.
I'm not really a big Spelljammer fan. There are people who I think everything should be written, even fictional books, by somebody who's super passionate about whatever it is. You know, I don't want the guy who's writing the book because he has to fulfill his contract for the next 6 months or whatever. And so I would yield on that. Like, people have asked me to do stuff for what's that? The really hard video game. What's it? It's like
Dark Souls.
Dark Souls. Like, they'll make like a Dark Souls. I'm like, I've never even played that game. Like, I don't know. Like, people come to me like, oh, you want to do this? And I'm like, oh man, that's not really my bag. So I've heard people say, if you go ask the same question in the Shadow Dark Facebook group, I think there is somebody working on some angle of it. I do like the idea of the Gith in a certain way. Gith Yankee, or however, whichever version your favorite is. The idea that there's people from another dimension who see this dimension as like a raiding location, and then they go back. And so in the next product I'm making, it is Islamic fantasy setting that is much broader than Al-Qadim. Al-Qadim is focused on just Arabia, really.
Yeah. Like,
my setting is going to go from Indonesia to Cordoba, like just a huge expansion of the cultural elements that's being incorporated. And one of the things that I am incorporating into it is that there is a certain race that lives in another, like an ethereal realm, and they keep coming into our realm and taking stuff and disappearing. And it's kind of like something that even a genie would be pissed off and wanting to stop, you know, like it is a pain in the ass. And so I have created a race like that. And the great thing is I can use Gith artwork for that, but I can't call them Gith, right? So there's all these great stock art pieces that people have made of Gith, and I'll just use them, you know, and put them in. And these guys just show up from nowhere and steal your stuff and leave.
Well, I like your point that like a lot of stuff should be made from passion, and I feel like that's another big different feature from the design by committee from a lot of these big publishers like WotC, or really just WotC. I think a lot of people have this assumption that like other big publishers like Chaosium or Green Ronin or Palladium are like these massive entities like WotC, and they're like small time. They're not much bigger than the one man show like Vic and I or you in a lot of respects. But that you have to have passion about what you want it to be, and you have to like find that passion. Like, people keep pressuring me like, when is the Conquistador thing coming out for Muckweedle? And I'm like, look, I just don't feel it right now. I don't feel like if I were to work on it right now, like, you're not gonna like what comes out. Like, I need to like get in the mindset. I'm not there. Trust me, I wish I was, but like, it's just hard, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like I think that having that passion there and desire for it, because like I assumed when you did Shadow Sun, you know, it's because you like Dark Sun. Yeah, I couldn't think. I was thinking Shadow Sun still. My brain's like fried.
So many names that are dark or shady. You know.
You know, I assumed like, oh, he did that because he loves Dark Sun. You know, Vic does the modern stuff because he loves the modern stuff. Like, I did the Aztec stuff because that really interests me. And so like I think from an individual standpoint as a creator, it's like, why would I make something I'm not interested in? Like, it's the desire for making money isn't there. Like, if I don't care about Dark Souls, like, why would I make a Dark Souls thing to grift on people that like Dark Souls? It's not the people that like Dark Souls aren't going to like what I make. So
I think a lot of that comes from just the unique nature of your life. Like, people discount this kind of stuff all the time, but like, I grew up in a school district that is very close geographically to the Etowah Indian mounds, which are like the Cahokia Indian mounds for the southern mound building cultures. And as a result of that, once for elementary school, once for middle school, once for high school, we went on field trips to these Indian mounds, and they're really cool. It's really cool location. But now that's like built into my head. You know, I've been there so many times. So when I write some setting, I almost always have a culture somewhere in the setting that builds mounds and has religious activities associated with those mounds. Like, that's just baked in now to me. And, you know, I've been to the Temple of the Moon in Mexico City. Went out to Teotihuacan. Like, I've been there. So when I make it in my head, like, I imagine, I can see, like, oh, it would be this tall. It would be like, this is what it would be like to stand in front of this huge pyramid, you know. Being able to do that is like not common. There's tons of people who've never seen an Indian mound, who've never been to a Mesoamerican pyramid. They've never seen, so they don't have that connection with it. But, you know, Victor, he's the man of the swamplands. He could write he could write Netherlands stuff for, you know, we aren't familiar with. So
I've seen a lot of European stuff. I mean, I've been, you know, like, for me, like, a castle is like, I'm like literally in walking distance of like a castle, like, you know. But for Americans, like, castles, like, ooh, that's mythical, that's King Arthur. For me, it's like, yeah, there's a castle over there. It's a hotel right now. Like, so yeah.
Well, yeah, that's like, everybody comes from some unique circumstance, and, you know, if you grow up in Texas, like Gary Lewis in the chat, you know, he's got a special connection to one. He wants me to work on a Red Dead conversion of Shadow City, because he wants, you know, that, like, he's from Texas, there's a cowboy culture, all this kind of stuff. Like, it would be super cool, and I'm down with it. I'm not as passionate about it as some of the other things, but everybody comes from that unique perspective, and I want people to write something they're really, really excited about writing.
I actually personally love Westerns, and I love, like, Weird West, and I'm like a big spaghetti Western fan and like stuff like that. But that's, you know, that's because I grew up on those kinds of movies and stuff like that. So even though I'm European, like, I'm very passionate about, like, the American Old West and stuff. So, you know, I would gladly personally do like a Shadow Dog, like, Weird West game. So
when are you coming to North Texas then, Vic?
Oh no, I want to go to the con. There was a while ago that Black Lodge and stuff were at. Can't remember what it's called. Just North Texas, I think.
Yeah, it's called North Texas.
Yeah, like, I want to go to that con and some other cons, like, maybe in the next few years. It depends on how my next game is gonna go, because that's gonna, like, influence my finances and stuff. So,
got a super chat here from Ben, 10 pounds. He says, Victor, I have a game request for you. Abiotic Factor. The visuals are inspired from Half-Life. You play a scientist in a facility when everything's gone wrong. Draws inspiration from SCP and the Backrooms too. I think you've already talked about doing something like that.
Yeah, I'm a big Half-Life fan. Blacklight would actually work pretty well for kind of like an opposing force type thing, where you're like the team that gets sent in to deal with, like, you know, Black Mesa gone wrong. And I could definitely see kind of like, you know, it's like just including like a scientist class, like, you know, just like a surviving scientist, or maybe even just one that tags along because they need, like, you know, somebody who actually understands, like, the physics of everything that's going on. Like, you know, if you've got the dude that's just like the soldier with a machine gun, you might need a scientist that actually knows what, like, those portals are doing. So yeah, I've actually talked before about doing kind of like a Black Mesa, like, inspired, like, mega dungeon at some point. It would be very tedious because I actually don't really like designing dungeons because it's tedious, but it also would be really cool. So I don't know. I might do it at some point.
I think Half-Life 2 is better suited, because as much as I love the video game and I love Black Mesa, there's no place to rest and recover and rehabilitate. Like, if things go bad, you're just stuck in it's like playing in the mega dungeon that you can't leave.
Yeah.
I'd rather have like Half-Life 2, where you're kind of an underground resistance, you know, and the aliens are an oppressive, controlling government, basically. That would be a lot more flexible from a game, because you could create locations that are temporary, and that you're attacking that location, and then you pull back out. Yeah.
Well, that's the kind of like what's a drawback of like mega dungeons in general, though. Like, I see a lot of people like, what am I supposed to do when it like takes longer than a week to go through this thing?
Yeah.
So
I think with a Half-Life thing for Half-Life 1, you'd have to have like little pockets in there somehow, and explain how those pockets are like resisting, the horrors that are outside of the office doors in there and whatnot, in order to, like Chubby says, to have like resting and stuff like that. So I don't know how to explain that. This is more your realm, Vic, so you make it. So
yeah. No, I could definitely see that. That'd be a cool kind of like mega dungeon. Like I said, have you heard of a thing called spaghetti westerns? Yeah, I literally said spaghetti westerns, I think.
I think he might be being facetious. So.
I think he's trolling you.
Yeah. No, but no, I'm a big fan of like the Dollar trilogy, like the original Django movies, like Bud Spencer, Terence Hill, like those kinds of movies. So
hey, I mean, I wrote a cowboy game. It's not Weird West.
Yeah.
I did make a cowboy game.
Yeah. You like the more realistic. I also love that, but I also I'm a big fan of the Weird West because it ties into like that urban fantasy stuff.
You could make a post-apocalypse Europe game called A Few Euros More. And it's everything is gone to shit, but it's like cowboy technology.
I did write a post-apocalypse Europe game. It's called Waste Runners, and it is actually based on his Western Co-Punchers system, the first version.
Oh, cool.
But it's basically Stalker. But what if like the zone wasn't just the Ukraine, but it was like all of like Western and Central Europe?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I actually did write that, and I want to
Europe stuff.
Yeah, I want to revisit it someday. And yeah, because I'm European and I do love the apocalypse. My brain does tend to go to like the more American stuff because I grew up on like playing the original Wasteland game, like the original Fallouts, different types of movies and stuff. So when I do think of post-apocalypse, my brain tends to go to like you're in Nevada and like a muscle car, But since I'm European and I kind of want to like as far as like RPGs go. Like I want to like promote that kind of European factor sometimes. I do kind of like try to lean towards like, yeah, it's post-apocalypse, but like Paris is messed up, or so.
Let me see. I'm going to bring your Kickstarter back up so people don't forget it. What I did notice here too, for people that are interested in your Kickstarter, is like you have a bunch of add-ons here for a lot of your previous stuff that's compatible with Shadowdark and your Ambition and Avarice too.
Yep.
Two.
50% off for the PDF.
Awesome.
Some people have asked me about getting a add-on of a coupon to buy the POD for that stuff. I didn't include it at the beginning because I didn't want to also have stretch goals that you could have bought. Basically, it would be like a conflict. But if anybody did want to do that, just email me and I can, if I can verify that you bought the PDF, I really don't have a problem with giving you a code to do POD at cost. The component that I control, you already paid with the PDF. So, I don't have any problem doing that.
Yeah.
And looking at the pledges here, $20 is a good price. People always say this too, like you got to pay the at costs for, and you have it listed here, $9 for soft cover, $14 for hard. Vic, me, I think Black Lodge Games, everyone gets that one. I don't know if you've had that one person where they don't actually read their pledge tier and they're like, I didn't know that I was going to have to. It's like, bro.
I literally mentioned it like 50 times throughout the whole, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I even made my own custom graphic for it because I really I'm not a big fan of drive-through's custom graphic on it. It's further up high. But yeah, right there. It's just one price. You get the 20, you get the PDF, and then you just have an option to print it if you want. which is, for all the, you're selling on drive-through, that's how it works anyway, really. Like, there's your component of the price, and then there's the print cost that you can't get rid of anyway, and then shipping, which they're paying. Like, so it's very transparent, and some people have pricing models that I do not understand. I admire the hell out of Greg Gillespie, but I don't understand how he chooses the prices that he sets for his products. Stuff like that, like where it's like $50 for a PDF or something, like what's going on? So I've always had pretty reasonable prices, and then if people are patient and wait for a sale, they can probably get it for half off at some point. But if once this Kickstarter is over, Shadow City will go on drive-through for a higher price, and then I'm much less likely to discount it for like the first year because I did it as a Kickstarter. So you just let it work itself out, and then people can still get it. But if we're really close to the stretch goal here at the end, let's get it up to 10K.
Yeah, definitely.
Get the hardcover.
Everybody can get a player companion.
And then what's the 20? The
GM companion. That's amazing. Like, the GM companion came out a year after the player companion, and it's already overtaken the sales figures. So like, it's been much better. So, hey, people, I guess more people wanted extra tables as a GM.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things. Hearing you say that makes me think like some aspect. Like, Vic and I get a lot of crap from Zero Prep and our position on that. But to me, hearing you say that tells me like people are hungry for that kind of tool, though. They're hungry for the tools of Zero Prep. Even if they're going to prep, they still understand, like, the average person out there that's playing in the hobby is like, these are useful tools that I can use, whether I'm going to use them at the table or in my prep. I don't know. That's encouraging to me. I love to see that kind of game style kind of come back a little bit.
Well, a lot of people that just do stuff, they don't feel a need to talk about it. They just do it. The ones that do talk about it are the complainers. Like, it's like reviews on like restaurants,
All 1s and 5s. Yeah.
Yeah.
And occasionally you get somebody who comes at you with a demand or like that's just unreasonable. I have a product called Terra Invictus, and it has a map, and you can print the map on drive-through. Drive-through has a card system that you can print 12 by 18 glossy kind of poster map thing, and it's available on there. And I put that in the product description. Well, on both products, like, here, this map is for this product, and this product has this map. Drive-through won't let you bundle them because the card system prints through a different print house and setup than the books. So all that's display, and then there's somebody who gave me, I think, like a 2 or 3 star review, and they were like, I didn't get a map with this, and I'm like, oh my god, like, what do you want me to do? Like, I can't.
Yeah, it's not in my.
Do. So people will come up with all kinds of things to complain about. That's just.
I've had my share of that. Yeah.
You got to just be patient with it. I get it. Yeah, it's frustrating, but yeah.
I had somebody. They got a copy of Modern Necessities, and the printer like messed up the cover. Like, it was like cut out. It was like cut right above the title, so it just didn't look good. And I was like, oh yeah, the printer messed up. Like, I'm sorry. And then they just kept like lambasting me about it. Like, it was like my fault basically. And it's like, no, the printer did that.
And they'll replace that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's very frustrating as the creator. You order your proof, and the proof comes miscut, and now you have to complain and get a reprint on your own proof. So now you're waiting another 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah,
replace, because you don't know if it is right or if they screwed it up. Like,
that happened to me once on one of my books, and I think I had just resubmitted the file and printed because I thought it was my fault. But now that you're saying that, I'm wondering if it was just printed wrong, and like I was right the first time.
Yeah,
like,
because
I used their templates, so it's like
Yeah.
I've
was like-
gotten proofs in fine, and then I release it to the public, and then like the first one of like 100 or whatever is just like messed up. It's like, well, that's the printer's fault, not mine. I did it fine. The proof was fine. So
Yeah. I just gave the copy to my son and said, "Here you go. This is yours."
Yeah.
It looks wrong.
Well, Vic, you had Toe Stubber, I think. He ordered your Modern Necessities, and then he opened it up. From Drive Through RPG, he opened it up, and inside it was Ashes Without Number.
Yeah,
He got an entirely different game inside. It's like, how do you even do that? Because
I was like, well, you got a probably better game, like for the price of Modern Necessities. So, hey, congratulations!
It makes me wonder if it got swapped, so like someone else got their Ashes Without Number.
I hope
book.
so. That'd be awesome.
Like, what is
Hate
this?
me now.
Who's this scrying Dutchman?
Yeah, what is this bullshit?
But I did want to add on, TB, about what you're saying about using zero prep stuff.
Sure, yeah.
In that product, Terra Invictus, every hex has its own D6 encounter table, and I use the weight in that encounter table to represent how dangerous it is. So if it's a dangerous hex, like over half of the results are hostile. And if you're walking through a civilized countryside, there might be a hazard or a trap, but otherwise it's all nice. And it was a great way to take a lot of ideas of world building and kind of make story. I hate that word to use it with role playing games, but like, so if you're walking along and you get a random encounter that there's a nobleman who's being beat up by a thief on the road and you save him, now you have like an ally in the world, like you
potential patron.
change the world, you know. And so a lot of the random encounters might be like you get a result of you found some piece of equipment that somebody left on a rock or leaning against a tree or something, but it might be some kind of story element that you pick up and run with as part of your world. And if you build most of the interactions and most of the stuff in your world that way through, there's a 3% chance you're going to run into a dragon in this forest. Eventually, like if you run into the dragon, like that will affect your game, massively affect the game. And just rolling with that stuff rather than being kind of scared to roll encounter checks because you don't want to interrupt the story you're trying to tell by diverting the players. Like just let the story be what the encounter checks are.
There's a lot of people that because we've talked about this at length about like using random encounters and random tables to like build your world, and there's a lot of people that push back against that, and they claim like, oh well, it makes your world like too random and it makes it like clown shoes and it just makes it stupid and gonzo and we're like, no, like, well, we do it fine, like, come on.
In my white box game that I was running a while back, there was a desert between the dungeon and the village that the players were kind of based out of and using it as their home base. And so they're crossing back and forth, and they kept rolling up hill giants in the desert or just giants in the desert and a blue dragon. And I just ruled it was like the same blue dragon that they were seeing. And luckily, it's like you saw a dragon, and I'm like, we're going to roll for surprise. We roll for surprise. The dragon is surprised every time they weren't surprised. And I roll in the open too. So like nobody knows. There's no accusations of fudging or anything like that. But the blue dragon became this other story where the players are like, they ended up near his lair and they found out he has this cult where he's eating virgins and stuff like that from this local village. And they work with the village to try and solve that problem. And they don't really solve it very well. They eventually they messed up one of the offerings, and they had to like eventually make all the villagers refugees before the dragon came and burned electrified their whole settlement. But then the hill giants, they ran into hill giants a couple of times, and every time they negotiated with them, and I played off the hill giants as their big stupid like dummies, and they tricked them like twice. And they were like, it was fun because if we run into giants for a third time, they're going to be the same giants that live in this area, and we're not going to. They're dumb, but they're not that dumb. We're not going to trick them again. So we have to be like very careful. And this is all this is all stuff that like played off of random encounter tables, it's a lot of fun. Like I find that I construct way more interesting stuff on the fly like that than I ever would if I had sat down and tried to plan that out,
Well, I ran a Modern Necessities Keep on the Borderlands game, and one of the first random encounters I rolled was a single bandit, and he tried to warp the party, and it went wrong, and they like tried to kill him, and he like ran away and managed to escape. And then a few sessions later, like they ran into like 8 bandits, and they killed 7, and a single one managed to run away and escape. So I just said like, "Hey, it looks kind of familiar." And then like it just like I just rolled bandits again, and every time, just by sheer happenstance, like this wasn't planned on my end. It's just like a single one every time managed to like escape. So it just became like this same bandit, like parkouring, like free running through the forest, like dodging bullets, just getting away from them, and it was just the same dude every time. Because I don't know, I thought that was funny, and it kind of gave them like this weird rival that they had to deal with. So yeah, and that was fun. Just purely through like random rolls and stuff. So
well, in the Shadow City playtest, they went into a place and I randomly rolled that. There was an encounter, and it was a celebrity that was trying to buy back their pictures that they didn't want going public from the paparazzi. And so I made up a celebrity on the spot named Bitney Deers. And Bitney Deers was very interested in getting her pictures back from this paparazzi. And they ended up helping her and then screwing up the thing, ending up having to kill this guy. Like everything went sideways, but that was all on them. Like all I did was throw this celebrity into the mix and let them roll with it. And players will do all kinds of stuff that you don't expect them to do that change the whole world. If your idea is they're going to eventually get to my really cool story, so I got to force them through all these encounters that are make it so that what they do doesn't matter until they do things I want them to do. That's just I don't think people like playing in that kind of game eventually, and they'll quit on you, and you'll get frustrated as the GM. I have a little dog. He's been in the background a couple of times while we've been on here, and I can't get him to do things sometimes. That I can't like start screaming at him because he won't come over here when I want to talk to hold him, pick him up or something. Like he's an animal. He's different from me. Players are different from you. Let them interact with the world in the way that they do.
Well, when I first started running 5e, I ran like mostly modules, and all my best memories from those aren't stuff that the modules said. They were just like the random shit that happened. It's like, oh, there's a random encounter with a revenant, and I wanted to make it a little bit more interesting, so I kind of made him like Umbra from like Morrowind, where he's just like this immortal warrior who just like is tired of like being like immortal, and he just wants to like die like in like honorable combat. So, he just challenged like the fighter, like, hey, let's, have a duel and like all that stuff. And like that became like an interesting NPC just from like a random roll. Like I just rolled like a single revenant. So yeah, like those are all my best memories.
Well, I think, I said earlier that phrase of like no plan or plan of attack survives contact with the enemy. And so that sounds like it's a disadvantage, but there's a way of none of your prep, none of your ideas are going to survive the players. And you can either lament that and cry about it and worry about it, or you can use it to your advantage and be like, hold on a minute, my players are idea generators themselves. And actually, if I lean on them to generate content for me, then by their actions, it makes my job way easier as a referee, as a GM, as a DM, right? Like I just have to react to what they do in a logical way that would make sense with the world. So I appreciate that you have that in Shadow City. And I know that that's just part and parcel of Kelsey's game. Vic had some camera issues. I know that it seems like she runs, or she at least puts the tools in the game for running this style of game. And I that's one thing Shadow Dark has gotten a bit of hate and pushback from people out there in the old school sphere. And to me, like, it's not my favorite game on my bookshelf, but I appreciate her trying to bring these concepts into the mainstream and like getting people to try them, because I try and get people to try them and they don't want to listen, but they seem to want to listen to her. So
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Her marketing and promotion abilities are far and away,
they're
crushing most people in the old school community. And when the Western Reaches came out, there were a lot of people who were butthurt about different aspects of it. But Kelsey introduced West March's style to more people than any other person in history, I think.
Yeah. She also gave credit where credit.
Yeah, and she gave credit for it. Like she said, this is I can't understand why anyone would be mad that the champion for their idea is reaching the highest number of people possible. Like, I want, a Kickstarter for West March's style play to reach as many people as possible. I want old school games to reach as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Because if somebody comes from 5th edition or from Vampire or from whatever, and they play an old school game and they go, wow, this is really a lot better gameplay experience than what I was getting before, then it's likely that they're going to look at other old school games that you might like better than Shadow Dark, that you might like better than whatever, better than OSE, better than whoever is being successful at the moment. It's good that they're successful. It's good that those people come in. And I was going to say this a second ago when you were talking about random encounters a little bit. I don't want to beat a dead horse too much, but I think it also helps to think of yourself as a player, right? And you rolled up a random encounter with 4 gnolls. You are the player of those 4 gnolls. What would those gnolls do? And in Victor's case, like, the bandit was like, I'm going to get the hell out of here. That was his, he was role playing that character, one bandit versus a whole party. Like, he's going to try to escape. I'm often the last person standing in my own parties because I tend to be a sniper. I like to play ranged characters, and I like to retreat and shoot. And so a lot of the guys who run in, they get killed, and I'm the last one, like, pulling back at the end. So if I'm playing, I'm the GM, but I'm playing these gnolls, one of them might see what's going on and go, I need to get the hell out of here and start to retreat. That's me being a player of those gnolls. And if everything is like you playing the gnolls, not for what the gnolls would be doing, but what some meta plot is that you've figured out, that you want the gnolls to trick them into doing something. So you're bending reality, and the gnolls would, in this case, run away, but you're going to have them stay and fight because that's what you want as the GM. Like, that's just bad play. Like, be a player, play the characters, and see
definitely
where that goes. If it ends up being you're the guy who's run away from 3 battles, and now you've got this distinctive personality, or if it's the giants that just keep coming up, and you every time you're playing, like, that becomes like your character, but you're the GM is a player of the game also.
Well, I remember one example that I use all the time. I rolled up to Cyclopi, whatever the fuck plural is, Cyclops, and I could have just made it like 2 Cyclops show up at clubs, go fight them. But no, I actually made it a couple with a pregnant female that were like fleeing from the war that was going on, kind of like as the overarching like meta plot and stuff. And they just wanted to get away from the area, and the party actually ended up like pointing them to like a safe zone that they knew and stuff. And it was like a really nice, like cool, like role playing encounter rather than just like, a box standard, like, oh, here's some like 2 Cyclopi to fight. So yeah.
I'm a guy with big shoulders and very tall, and I've found people don't want to fight me when we come into random encounters,
Yeah.
and they offer to help guide me to a different location before they get smushed.
Yeah.
Well, for me, like I think on the whole the way to run a game like that too, there's like a meta game. I think that I agree with you that the playing the gnolls, playing the monsters as a player is smart. But I also see sort of there's like this meta game that I play as a referee where I have all these disparate things. And so the players challenge their obstacles, like whatever's presented in front of them in the world, they're trying to overcome and get to the next goal that they've set for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like they're always throwing these wrenches in the system. And I'm sort of like using tables and things to sort of be like, can I make this coherent? The player just did this. Can I make that coherently fit into this world that we're constructing together? And to me, that's like a lot of fun. I think that's like they're in the dungeon and you roll up like a weird monster that's there on the random encounter table, and you're sort of like, like how would I make this fit into the setting or in the situation and make this make sense? To me, that's like that's the fun part of GMing. It's a little different than being the player where you're like, I'm confronted with this problem. I'm going to try and figure out a really unique, creative way of solving it. You know, I'm going to use a spell in a creative way, or I'm going to use a tool in a creative way, or a magic item in a creative way. So there's like the same logic behind both, but like in my opinion, the referees kind of do it on a meta level of the game.
Well, like you said, referees are also players. And as a player, I like being surprised. So why wouldn't I like being surprised as the referee? Why would I have to like prep everything beforehand and like there's no surprises? Like, no. Like I like rolling and seeing like what comes up, and I'm like, and then like me interpreting it and like just rolling with the punches. It's fun.
I'm running Gods of the Forbidden North right now. With
cool.
We had started out using Ambition and Avarice, but as they got higher level, the converting everything on the fly was killing me. So we just switched over, and they're actually playing OSE characters now. We just converted them, and they went into a town to winter for 2 months, and they had a powerful dark artifact that was driving them, and whoever was in control of it was holding it was being driven insane. And so they ended up, before the session, I was like, there's these 3 factions that they're going to want this. But as soon as they realize that these guys have this artifact, they're going to like go after it. And the players ended up donating it to the church to try to get rid of it, like so that they wouldn't have when they threw it in a fire, it caused the fire to snuff out, and they took some damage. So they were like, okay, we can't get rid of it that way. So they gave it to the church, and then like almost immediately, I just had the people, one of the groups that wanted it, stole it from the church, killed the people at the church who had it, and so now it's like, are they going to pursue and recover this thing that they were desperate to get rid of? Like, are they going to let this evil associate or faction keep it? Like what? They don't even know who took it. It's like by throwing in these wrenches, that this is just like me adapting, like you were saying, like to what the situation is. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to want this book. And I think a lot of people, especially when they're new GMs, they're afraid of improvising on the fly. They don't like going into a session not knowing what their position is. Yeah. But I think it's okay to just take a moment and go, what would happen here? Like that's why you're a referee, not the player. Yeah. Like you're saying.
Well, there's this perception that if you do stuff on the fly, it makes your shit just random and gonzo, and it doesn't make any sense, and it makes it stupid. It's like, no, like you still have control over it. Just because it's random doesn't mean that you have to go with everything that you have to make it like silly. You still have the, your referee fiat to like tone it down a little.
And people often don't consider the opposite situation. So how many video games are we played where you just throw the evil artifact on the ground and nobody even picks it up? Nobody even tries to touch it. Like that's just as bad. Like the GM has to figure out how the world would respond to some degree, because otherwise it doesn't make sense that you would be able to take all these actions and nobody in the world takes advantage of you doing something. that they could benefit from. Like nobody
Yeah.
steals the bag of gold that you dropped on the ground. Like you could play any number of role-playing games on computer and just throw money all over the floor and just walk around town just throwing money on the ground, and none of the NPCs will even stop to pick it up.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, we're at the 2-hour mark. This is usually when we end it here. I want to encourage everyone to check out Chubby Funster's Kickstarter. It's already funded, but you're like, let me refresh it here. I want to see. Let's see how close, if at all, you are to getting your almost to 10K to the hardcover still. I think you got a backer or two since being on stream here. So
yeah, definitely.
Check it out. Link is pinned on here on YouTube. This one right here, and it's in the video description below. Chubby, is there anything final you want to direct people towards, or anything we maybe missed that you want to make sure people know about for the Kickstarter or anything like that?
No, just you'd said you'd linked my drive-through page. I have a lot of products on drive-through. I have Shadow Sun, which we talked about, which is like a Dark Sun adaptation into Shadow Dark. I did a similar thing for Skyrim with Shadow Rim, and like instead of a normal class design from Shadow Dark, you roll your talents off of a constellation, like in Skyrim. I've got Terra Invictus is like a hex crawling adventure. The GM companion and the player companion just take whichever aspect of the core book and add a ton more more for the players, more equipment, more races, more classes, all that kind of stuff. And for the GM, more tables for creating traps and hazards and random towns and random dungeon rooms and that kind of thing. So check it out, and there's probably something that would appeal to you, and my prices are really reasonable. So
yeah, you're like Vic and me. I always feel like I should charge more, but then I feel like I want people to like feel comfortable buying my stuff. Not that it's cheap or something, but just like gaming can break the bank sometimes, and I want people to play my stuff. So
yeah.
Well, there's a like a Pareto curve from an economics perspective of like the more you raise the price, the fewer people will buy it, and there's some kind of optimal price out there. I don't know what it is, but I feel like $10 for a PDF is pretty close to ideal in most cases. For like, it depends on the length of the PDF, but it's a nice price. You can pick it up and check it out. A lot of people buy role-playing game books just to read and absorb the information, not even to play. So making it so it's reasonable for somebody to pick it up as a casual read and get your ideas, and you just say what is this all about, and check it out. I think that's a good way to look at it.
I've kept my stuff around $5 to $15, but I've only done supplements so far, and I think that's fair for like a supplement for an existing game. But since I'm working on my own standalone game now, that's definitely going to be a little bit more expensive. So,
Vic, do you have anything that you want to direct people towards, or?
You can still late pledge Blacklight, which is also for Shadow Dark, which is my supplement, where it's kind of like SCP Foundation type stuff. Basically, special forces team that like deals with like extra dimensional horrors, which could include vampires. So like Chubby has said, maybe once you've played Shadow Dark and your vampire has been discovered by humanity, like humanity now knows that vampires exist, or at least your vampire exists, maybe then you can switch to Blacklight, and now you're the team hunting those vampires down. Could be very fun. So yeah, check it out. You can still late pledge, like I said, very reasonable price. So you can already download work in progress PDFs, which have almost the full rules done so far. So
cool. For me, I have my own Kickstarter that will be coming live on the 1st. I'll have the link right here in the chat for YouTube here. It's linked below as well. It is on pre-launch right now, so please check it out. I'm doing this whole box set thing, and you can kind of watch the video and read the blurb. I won't bore anyone else with that here, because we're talking about Chubby here and his Kickstarter. So
yeah,
check it out. Back his. Check out Vic's thing, Late Pledge, and if you're interested in White Box and you're looking for a 0E plus chainmail clone with everything integrated into each other, check out my White Box campaign. Chubby, thank you for coming on. I'm glad we could finally have you on. You've been in the chat for a while, and you're always welcome to come back, especially when you got something new that you've made or you want to talk about or something like that. Just hit Vic or me up.
Cool. It was great being here.
Yeah, it was fun discussion.
Yeah, good discussion. Everyone in the chat seemed to like it. So we'll end the stream here. Thank you guys for the chat for watching. Thank you for your generosity in the super chats, and we'll catch you guys in the next stream.
See you later.
Dag iedereen.
Because they are, in fact, experiencing mentally